Thanksgiving Eve, and Dr. Elena Voss, chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Mount Sinai, youngest woman to ever hold that title, was standing in a gas station parking lot outside Jasper, Alabama, watching steam curl from the hood of a rented Audi she did not know how to fix. She had no cell signal. The highway stretched behind her like a gray ribbon disappearing into nothing. The gas station was closed. A hand-painted sign in the window reading Happy Thanksgiving, Seek Y'all Friday, and the only light for a quarter-mile came from a diner across the road called Maze, where a neon pie flickered in the window like a lazy heartbeat. Elena Voss did not eat at diners. She ate at restaurants with reservations and wine lists and waitstaff who knew the difference between Sancerre and Sauvignon Blanc. She had not set foot inside a place with laminated menus since she was 19 years old and swore she never would again. But the temperature was dropping. Her phone was dead, and the last tow truck she'd passed was 40 miles back. She crossed the road. The bell above the door jingled when she pushed it open. Maze was small, 8 booths, a counter with swivel stools, and a kitchen visible through a rectangular window where someone was scraping a grill. The walls were covered in old photographs, high school football teams and church picnics, and somebody's wedding from 1974. It smelled like coffee and cornbread and something sweet baking in an oven. 3 of the booths were occupied. An elderly couple sharing a slice of pie. 2 teenage boys hunched over their phones. And in the booth nearest the window, a man sat across from a boy of about 8 or 9, both of them bent over a sheet of paper, drawing something with crayons. A woman appeared from the kitchen, mid-50s, broad shoulders, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. "Sit anywhere, honey. Menu's on the table. We're closing at 9, but you got time." Elena chose the booth farthest from everyone, sat down, and stared at the menu without seeing it. She was supposed to be in Gulf Shores by now, at the beach house she'd rented for one. Not for Thanksgiving. She didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, hadn't in years, but because her therapist had suggested she take a vacation, and Elena had interpreted that as, go somewhere alone where no one will bother you. She had not told her therapist that being alone was the problem. She had not told anyone that, because admitting it would mean admitting that everything she had built, the career, the reputation, the apartment on the Upper East Side with the Peloton she never rode and the Le Creuset she never cooked with, had been constructed at the expense of every relationship she'd ever had. Her ex-husband, Paul, had said it plainly enough the day he left. "You don't need anyone, Elena. That's your superpower and your curse." He'd been gone 4 years now. Remarried. 2 kids. She'd seen the photos on Facebook before she deleted the app, Paul grinning in a backyard somewhere in Raleigh, with a woman who looked relaxed in a way Elena had never managed. Her mother called once a month from Stanford, conversations that lasted exactly 6 minutes and covered weather, work, and nothing that mattered. Her father had died when she was 14, heart attack, the cruelest irony for the daughter who grew up to fix other people's hearts. And her mother had responded to grief the way she responded to everything, by becoming more efficient. The house got cleaner, the schedule got tighter, the feelings got smaller until they could fit in a drawer nobody opened. Elena had learned well. "You ready to order, or you need a minute?" She looked up. The woman with the reading glasses was standing beside her booth, pad in hand, a pen tucked behind her ear. "Just coffee, please. Kitchen closes in 30. We got turkey pot pie, meatloaf plate, or breakfast for dinner. The pot pie's the move, if you're asking me. Just coffee." The woman, her name tag said Jew N, gave her a look that was equal parts sympathy and stubbornness. "Honey, I've been feeding people for 27 years, and I can tell when someone needs more than coffee. I appreciate that, but I'm fine." June left and came back with coffee and a slice of cornbread she hadn't asked for. On the house, butter's in the little dish. Elena opened her mouth to protest, but June was already gone, back behind the counter, refilling the elderly couple's cups. The cornbread was warm. She ate it without thinking, and it was so good, dense and slightly sweet with a crust that crumbled against her fingers, that she felt something loosen in her chest, which was ridiculous. It was cornbread. It was not a revelation. From the booth by the window, the boy's voice carried across the diner. "Dad, she's eating alone. Isaiah, keep your voice down. But it's Thanksgiving Eve. Nobody eats alone on Thanksgiving Eve. Elena kept her eyes on her coffee. She could feel the man glancing her way, the quiet calculation of a parent deciding how much to indulge a child's observation. Maybe she wants to be alone, buddy. Nobody wants to be alone. That's what Mama used to say. A pause. Elena heard the man exhale, the kind of breath that carries weight, that comes from a place deeper than lungs. Then a chair scraped. Footsteps approached. She looked up. He was tall, mid-30s, wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hands were calloused, working hands, not office hands. His face was kind in a way that had nothing to do with softness. There was something steady about him, like a person who had weathered enough to know what mattered. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. My son has very strong opinions about people eating by themselves on holidays." He smiled, a little embarrassed. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Cole. That's Isaiah. He wanted me to tell you that you're welcome to join us, but only if you want to. No pressure." Elena looked past him to the booth where Isaiah was watching with wide, hopeful eyes. He gave her a thumbs up. "That's very kind," Elena said, "but I wouldn't want to intrude." "You wouldn't be. We've got more crayons than we know what to do with, and Isaiah's been trying to teach me how to draw a dragon for the last hour. I could use reinforcements." She should have said no. She was tired. Her car was broken, she had no phone, and she did not have the emotional bandwidth for small talk with strangers. She should have finished her coffee and asked June about a tow truck and found a motel and continued her careful, controlled life exactly as planned. But Isaiah was still giving her the thumbs up. And Marcus Cole was standing there with no agenda, no recognition, no idea that the woman in the booth was one of the most respected surgeons in the country. He just saw someone alone on a holiday and thought she might want company. She picked up her coffee and followed him. "I'm Elena." "Miss Elena, can you draw?" Isaiah asked before she'd even sat down. He was small for what she guessed was 8, with close-cropped hair and a gap-toothed smile that took up his whole face. The table was covered in crayon drawings. Dragons, mostly, in every color combination imaginable. "I haven't drawn anything in a very long time. That's okay. I'll teach you. Dad's terrible at it, but he tries. That counts for something." Marcus slid a sheet of paper and a crayon toward her. "Green. He's not wrong. I am terrible." "He made a dragon that looked like a potato," Isaiah whispered, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "It was an artistic choice," Marcus said, and Isaiah dissolved into giggles. The full-body kind, where a kid throws his head back and his whole self gets involved. Elena picked up the crayon. She couldn't remember the last time she'd held one. In her world, precision was everything. The angle of a scalpel, the tension of a suture, the exact millimeter between saving a life and losing one. There was no room for mess, for imperfection, for a dragon that looked like a potato. She drew a lopsided circle. "That's the head," she said. "It looks like an egg," Isaiah observed. "Dragons hatch from eggs. So, technically, I'm ahead of the game." He grinned. "I like you." June came by and refilled Elena's coffee without being asked, then looked at Marcus. "Your usual?" "Yes, ma'am. And whatever she's having." "I told you just coffee is the pot pie," Marcus said to June. "Trust me." June winked and disappeared. Elena should have been annoyed. She was a woman who made life-and-death decisions daily, and this man she'd known for 3 minutes was ordering her dinner. But there was something about the way he said, "Trust me," not as a command, but as an offering that made her let it go. "So, Miss Elena," Isaiah said, adding scales to his latest dragon with a red crayon. "Do you have kids?" "Isaiah." Marcus's voice held a gentle warning. "What?" "I'm making conversation. Mrs. Patterson says good conversationalists ask questions. Mrs. Patterson's his teacher," Marcus explained. "She's created a monster." "I don't have kids," Elena said. "I thought about it once, but my work, I travel a lot, long hours." Isaiah considered this. "My dad works a lot too. He builds houses, but he's always home for dinner. He says dinner is sacred. He's quoting his grandmother, Marcus said. My mama believed that whatever else happened in a day, you sat down together at the table. Didn't matter if it was a feast or beans and rice. You sat down. That's a nice tradition. It's the only one that's stuck. He said it lightly, but Elena caught the shadow behind his words. She recognized it, the way grief hides in the small things, in the traditions you keep and the ones you can't. The pot pie arrived. It was enormous, golden-crusted, steam rising from a crack in the center where June had cut a slit. Elena took one bite and closed her eyes. It was the kind of food that tasted like someone cared. Rich turkey and a thick gravy, carrots and peas and potatoes, all of it held together by a crust that shattered and then melted. Told you, Marcus said. This might be the best thing I've ever eaten. Don't tell June that. She's already impossible. I heard that, Marcus Cole, June called from behind the counter. Isaiah laughed again, and Elena found herself laughing too, and the sound of it surprised her. How foreign it felt. How good. They talked for the next hour, not about anything important, by the world's standards. Isaiah's favorite subject. Science, because you get to blow stuff up, but in a learning way. The house Marcus was renovating 2 streets over, a 1920s bungalow he'd bought after the previous owner passed, and the family didn't want it. How Isaiah wanted a dog, specifically a golden retriever, specifically named Rocket. Rocket is a perfect name, Elena said. See, Dad? Everyone thinks so. Everyone is one person who's known you for an hour. Quality over quantity. Marcus shook his head, but he was smiling, and Elena noticed the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he did, the lines of a man who smiled often, even when life gave him reasons not to. She didn't ask about Isaiah's mother. She didn't have to. The absence was there in the way Marcus carried himself. The extra attentiveness, the way he reached for Isaiah's shoulder during quiet moments, the framed photo Elena could see peeking from his wallet when he pulled it out to pay. A woman's face, beautiful, laughing at something off camera. It was Isaiah who brought her up, the way children do. Suddenly, without warning, like opening a door to a room you thought was locked. My mama would have liked you, he said to Elena, matter of fact, while coloring the wings of his biggest dragon yet. The table went quiet. Marcus looked at his son, and Elena saw something move across his face. Not pain exactly, but the place where pain used to live, now worn smooth by time and love. Yeah, Elena said softly. What was she like? She was a nurse. She helped sick people, like you probably do, since you look like a doctor. He tilted his head. You are a doctor, right? I am, actually. How did you know? You've got that look, like you're always paying attention to stuff other people miss. He shrugged. Mama had it too. Marcus cleared his throat. Isaiah's mom, Denise. She was a pediatric nurse at the county hospital. She passed 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. She was the one who found this place, actually. Marcus looked around the diner. We used to come every Friday night. Same booth. She'd get the meatloaf, I'd get the burger. Isaiah would get pancakes for dinner, because Denise said rules were for weekdays. Pancakes are the best dinner, Isaiah confirmed. Mama was right about everything. Almost everything, Marcus said. She thought the Braves would win the series in 23. Nobody's perfect, Dad. Elena watched them, the easy way they held Denise's memory between them, not as a wound, but as something warm, something they both could touch without flinching. She thought of her own father, how his death had become a silence in her family, a locked room no one entered. How different it might have been if someone had taught her to talk about him the way Isaiah talked about his mother, with love, with humor, with the simple certainty that the people we lose are still part of who we are. June came by at 5 to 9. Y'all, I hate to break up the party, but my couch is calling, and these old knees ain't getting any younger. Marcus stood and reached for his wallet. June, put hers on my tab. Absolutely not, Elena said. I'll pay for my own. You're a guest in our booth. House rules. I don't remember agreeing to house rules. They're implied. They looked at each other, and something passed between them. Not a spark, not yet, but the recognition of something possible, like the moment before a song begins, when the musician's hands hover above the keys and the air holds its breath. June settled it. Marcus, your money's no good tonight either. Everything's on me. Call it a Thanksgiving blessing. June, don't argue with me, Marcus Cole. I've known you since you were Isaiah's size, and I could still whup you. Yes, ma'am. Outside, the air had turned cold. Stars crowded the Alabama sky, more than Elena had seen in years. In Manhattan, you forgot that stars existed, that the universe was vast and indifferent and beautiful all at once. "Your car's the one at the station?" Marcus asked, nodding across the road. "Overheated. I don't know what's wrong with it." "I'll take a look." He walked over, Isaiah trailing behind, and popped the hood with the familiarity of someone who'd fixed things his whole life. After a minute, he straightened up, radiator hose split. "You're not driving this anywhere tonight. Is there a motel nearby?" "Nearest one's in Haleyville, 20 miles, but everything's closed for the holiday." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We've got a spare room." It's Isaiah's art room now, but there's a pull-out couch. You're welcome to it. Every alarm in Elena's head fired at once. She did not go home with strangers. She did not sleep in spare rooms in small Alabama towns. She was Elena Voss. She stayed at the Four Seasons. But Isaiah tugged her sleeve. "Please, Miss Elena, you can see my drawings. I've got a whole wall of dragons." So that night, Elena Voss, who had performed open-heart surgery on senators and CEOs and once, memorably, a Supreme Court justice, slept in a small room in a small house on a small street in Jasper, Alabama, surrounded by crayon dragons and the faint smell of sawdust from the bungalow Marcus was building next door. And for the first time in longer than she could say, she slept without dreaming of work. Thanksgiving morning. Elena woke to the sound of laughter and the smell of something frying. She followed it to the kitchen, where Marcus stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, while Isaiah sat at the table reading a comic book. "She's alive," Isaiah announced. "Dad made pancakes, Mama's recipe. They're the best in Alabama." "Bold claim," Elena said. "Bost truth," Marcus replied, sliding a plate in front of her. The pancakes were thick, golden, studded with blueberries. She took one bite and understood immediately why Denise had declared them worthy of dinner. "I called my buddy Ray about your car," Marcus said, pouring her coffee. "He can get the hose replaced, but the par won't be in till Saturday. Shop's closed for the holiday." 2 days. She was stranded for 2 days. The old Elena would have panicked, would have called her assistant, arranged a rental car, found a way to reassert control. But her phone was still dead. Marcus had offered a charger, but hers was the wrong kind, and something about this kitchen, with its mismatched mugs and the crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator and the morning light falling through a window that needed caulking, made the urgency feel distant. "You're welcome to stay," Marcus said, and then quickly, "No pressure. I can drive you to Haleyville if you'd rather." "Can she stay, Dad? Please." Marcus looked at Elena. She looked at Isaiah. The boy had a blueberry smudge on his chin and hope in his eyes, and she thought about her empty beach house in Gulf Shores and the silence waiting for her there. "I'd like that," she said. "Thank you." Thanksgiving at the Cole house was not what Elena expected. She had imagined it would be quiet, a man and his son, a modest meal. Instead, the door opened at noon and people began arriving. June from the diner with 2 sweet potato pies and a casserole she called the good one. Marcus's mother, Loretta, a small woman with silver hair and a handshake that could crack walnuts, who looked Elena up and down and said, "You're too thin, baby. Sit down." Marcus's younger sister, Tanya, with her husband Derek and their 3 kids, who immediately abducted Isaiah into some complicated game involving couch cushions and an elaborate system of rules that no adult could follow. The house filled with noise. With warmth, with the particular chaos of a family that loved each other loudly and without apology. Elena stood in the middle of it, holding a glass of sweet tea she didn't remember accepting, and felt like an astronaut who'd been floating in space for years and had suddenly, without warning, been pulled back into gravity. You look lost, Loretta said, appearing beside her. I'm not used to this much. Elena searched for the word. Life? I was going to say noise. Loretta laughed. Same thing, honey. The meal was enormous. Turkey, ham, collard greens, mac and cheese, cornbread dressing, candied yams, green beans with bacon, cranberry sauce from a can because, as Tanya declared, the homemade kind is a lie. Elena sat between Isaiah and Loretta, and when Marcus asked everyone to share what they were grateful for, she listened to each person speak and felt something she couldn't name. Not sadness exactly, but the awareness of how much she had missed, how many tables she had never sat at, how many Thanksgivings she had spent in operating rooms or empty apartments and called it dedication when it was really fear. When it came to her turn, the table went quiet. 8 faces looked at her with open, patient expectation. I'm grateful to be here, she said. I know that sounds simple, but yesterday I was alone on the side of a highway with a broken car and no phone, and now I'm sitting at this table with all of you, and I don't entirely understand how that happened. So, thank you. Isaiah patted her arm. You're welcome. Everyone laughed. Marcus caught her eye across the table and held her gaze, and in that moment Elena felt something shift. A door opening, a wall thinning, and she knew with the certainty of a woman who had spent her life reading the human heart that she was in trouble. The good kind, the terrifying kind. After dinner, Marcus washed and Elena dried. Not because anyone asked her to. Loretta had tried to shoo her away, but because she wanted to stand beside him in the warm kitchen and do something small and ordinary. Your family is wonderful, she said. They're a lot. That's what makes them wonderful. He handed her a serving dish. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them moved away. Can I ask you something? He said. Yes. Yesterday, when you were sitting alone in that diner, were you really just passing through, or were you running from something? The question landed like a stone in still water. She could have deflected. She was good at that. Redirect, reframe, maintain control. But Marcus was looking at her with an expression that expected nothing and offered everything, and she found that she didn't want to lie. Both, she said. I was driving to a beach house I rented because my therapist told me to take a vacation, and I didn't know where else to go. I don't have anyone to go to. I had a husband once. I have a mother who calls on Sundays. I have colleagues who respect me and patients who thank me, and not one person in the world who would notice if I didn't come home tonight. She said it plainly, the way she delivered diagnoses. Factual, controlled, final. But her hands had stopped moving, and the dish towel was clenched in her fists, and she could feel the whole terrible truth of it pressing against the back of her teeth. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I noticed. 2 words. She felt them land somewhere deep, in the place where she kept things she couldn't fix. That night, after Isaiah was asleep, they sat on the porch. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked once and went quiet. Denise was diagnosed a year after Isaiah was born, Marcus said. He wasn't looking at Elena. He was looking at the sky. She fought for 2 years. Chemo, radiation, a trial in Birmingham. I kept thinking, I'm a man who builds things. I should be able to fix this. But I couldn't build her a body that worked. I couldn't hammer the cancer out of her. I know that feeling, Elena said. I lose patience. Not often, but when I do, the helplessness is the worst part. After she died, I made Isaiah my whole world. Every decision, every thought, every breath was about him. And that was good. He needed me. I needed purpose. But somewhere in there, I stopped being a person. I was just Dad. Just the guy who builds houses and packs lunches and shows up. Those aren't small things. No, but they're not everything. He looked at her then. I forgot that I was allowed to want things for myself. Elena understood. She understood so completely that it hurt, because she had done the same thing, substituted work for life, purpose for connection, and told herself it was noble when it was just safe. She didn't plan what she did next. She reached over and took his hand. He didn't pull away. His palm was rough and warm and real. They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, and when she said good night at the door of Isaiah's art room, Marcus leaned forward and kissed her forehead, gentle, careful, like he was handling something he was afraid to break. Good night, Elena. She lay awake for an hour, staring at a crayon dragon on the wall, a purple one with gold wings and a smile, and pressed her fingers to the spot where his lips had been. She should have left on Saturday. Ray fixed the car. Marcus drove her to the station, and Elena sat behind the wheel of the rented Audi with the engine running and Gulf Shores waiting and no reason to stay. Isaiah had given her a drawing before she left. 3 figures standing in front of a house. A tall man, a small boy, and a woman with brown hair holding a dish towel. "That's you," he said, pointing. "You're part of the Thanksgiving picture now." She drove to Gulf Shores. She lasted one night. The beach house was beautiful, all glass and white linen and an ocean view that belonged on a postcard, and it was so quiet she could hear her own pulse. She drove back to Jasper on Sunday morning. Marcus opened the door and looked at her for a long moment, and then he stepped aside and let her in. It became a pattern. Weekends in Jasper, weekdays in Manhattan, she would scrub in for a triple bypass on Tuesday and read Isaiah bedtime stories over FaceTime on Wednesday. She'd present at a cardiology conference on Thursday and spend Saturday morning at the bungalow handing Marcus nails while he taught her how to frame a wall. She learned things about him in pieces, that he played football at Alabama State but blown out his knee sophomore year and pivoted to construction because his uncle needed help, and Marcus had always been better with his hands and with books, that Denise had been the reader, the dreamer, the one who filled the house with novels and music and the belief that their small life was enough. That after she died, he turned down 3 offers to work with bigger firms in Birmingham because Isaiah's school was here, Isaiah's friends were here, Denise's grave was here. He learned things about her too, that she put herself through medical school on scholarships and stubbornness, that her marriage had ended not with a fight, but with a silence. Paul coming home one night to find her still at the hospital at 11 p.m. and saying, very calmly, "I can't do this anymore, Elena," and her not arguing because she knew he was right, that she had chosen surgery because the heart was the one organ that never lied. It beat or it didn't. It healed or it didn't. And there was a clarity in that binary she couldn't find anywhere else in life. The first time Elena overstepped, it was subtle. Isaiah mentioned wanting a new set of colored pencils, the Prismacolor ones, Dad, the ones real artists use. That weekend, Elena showed up with a set of 150 Prismacolors, the full professional range, in a tin case that cost $120. Isaiah's eyes went supernova. Marcus's went quiet. Later in the kitchen, "Elena, those pencils cost more than his school supplies for the whole year. He wanted them. He's talented. Real tools matter. I know they matter. And I was going to get him a set, the 48-pack, the one that fits our budget. You jumped ahead of me." She hadn't thought of it that way. "I'm sorry. I just saw them and—" "I know. Your instinct is to give. That's not a bad thing. But when you give big and I can only give small, it makes me feel like I'm not enough for my own kid." The words hit her like a diagnosis she didn't want to hear. She nodded. "I hear you." And she meant it. But meaning it and doing it were different muscles, and Elena had spent 43 years strengthening the wrong ones. The second time was worse. Marcus mentioned in passing that the bungalow's permits were stuck in bureaucratic limbo, some zoning issue, a form that needed a signature from an office that was perpetually understaffed. It was costing him time and money he didn't have. Elena made one phone call. She knew people who knew people. The permits appeared within 48 hours. Marcus didn't thank her. He stood in his kitchen with the paperwork in his hand, and his jaw was tight, and when he spoke his voice was steady but thin. "I told you about the permits because I was venting, not because I needed you to fix it. I was trying to help. You were trying to control. There's a difference, and I need you to learn it." The silence that followed was heavy enough to sit in. "Every time you pull a string or write a check or make a call," Marcus said, "it tells me that who I am, what I can do on my own, isn't enough. It tells Isaiah that the way we live needs fixing, and it tells me that you see us as a project, not as people." Elena felt tears burn behind her eyes. She could not remember the last time she'd cried. "That's not how I see you." "Then stop acting like it." She drove back to New York that night. They didn't speak for a week, then 2, then a month. The silence was unbearable, not because it was empty, but because it was full of everything she'd done wrong and didn't know how to undo. She threw herself into work. 16-hour days, back-to-back surgeries. The hospital became her hiding place again, the way it always had been. The sterile walls and fluorescent lights and the absolute control of an operating room where she, at least, knew what she was doing. But at night, in her apartment with its perfect furniture and its perfect view and its perfect silence, she sat with Marcus's words and let them cut. "You were trying to control." She thought about Paul, who had said almost the same thing in gentler language. She thought about her mother, who controlled every surface and every minute because the alternative was feeling something. She thought about herself, how she had spent her entire life believing that if she could just do enough, fix enough, give enough, she would earn the right to be loved, as if love were a surgery she could master with enough precision. She went back to therapy. Real therapy this time, not the kind where she talked about work stress and skated over everything underneath, but the kind where she sat in a room with a woman named Dr. Adele Franklin and said things she had never said aloud. "I don't know how to just be with someone. I only know how to be useful." What happens if you're not useful? Then there's no reason for anyone to keep me around. She heard the words leave her mouth and felt the truth of them settle in her body like a cold she'd been carrying for decades. She didn't call Marcus. He had asked her to stop, and this time, this one time, she would give someone what they asked for instead of what she thought they needed. Instead, she found a free clinic in the Bronx that needed volunteer physicians. She showed up on a Saturday wearing jeans and sneakers and spent 8 hours treating ear infections and checking blood pressure and talking to a 90-year-old man named George who wanted to tell her about his late wife's gumbo recipe in extraordinary detail. She couldn't fix George's arthritis. She couldn't cure the 6-year-old's asthma. She couldn't solve the waiting room full of people who needed more than she could give. But she could be there. She could listen. She could let George describe every ingredient in the gumbo and nod in the right places and mean it. She went back the next Saturday, and the one after that. And Jasper, Isaiah wouldn't let Marcus forget. "When's Miss Elena coming back?" "I don't know, buddy." "Is she mad at us?" "No. Grown-ups sometimes need time to figure things out." "That's dumb." "Just call her. It's complicated. You always say that when it's actually simple." One night in March, Marcus found a new drawing on his pillow. Isaiah's style had improved. The figures were more detailed now, the colors more deliberate. 4 people standing in front of the bungalow, which Isaiah had drawn with a finished porch and a red front door. Marcus, tall and steady on the left. Isaiah in the middle, grinning. Denise on a cloud, a halo of yellow around her head, the way he always drew her. And on Marcus's other side, a woman with brown hair holding a dish towel. At the bottom, in Isaiah's careful printing, "OUR family." Marcus sat on his son's bed for a long time after that, holding the drawing and thinking about Denise. Not the grief, he had lived inside that long enough to know its every room, but the woman herself. The way she'd laughed at his worst jokes. The way she'd believed, fiercely and without compromise, that people deserve the chance to grow. Near the end, when they both knew what was coming, she had taken his hand and said, "Promise me you won't turn into a fortress." He had promised. He had lied. He picked up his phone. Elena almost didn't answer. The Alabama area code froze her hope and terror in equal measure. She let it ring 3 times, pressed accept, and said nothing. "Elena, it's Marcus. I know." A long pause. She could hear him breathing, and the sound of it, steady, real, made her close her eyes. Isaiah drew a picture, he said. You're in it. She pressed her hand to her mouth. I'm not saying everything's fixed, he continued. I'm not saying I'm over it. But my kid sees something I've been too stubborn to admit, and Denise would kick my ass if she knew I was pushing away someone who's trying to change. I am trying. I know. A buddy of mine works at a clinic in the Bronx. He told me about the surgeon who volunteers on Saturdays and spends half her time listening to some old man talk about gumbo. She laughed, and he came out wet. George. His wife's name was Alma. The gumbo takes 11 hours. Sounds about right. Another silence, but warmer now, a silence with room in it. I don't want to fix you, Marcus. I don't want to fix Isaiah or your house or your permits. I want to be in your life without turning it into my project. I'm learning how. I'm not there yet, but I'm learning. I know, he said. That's why I called. They took it slow. Phone calls first, then visits. Not every weekend. Not right away. When Elena came back to Jasper in April, she didn't bring gifts. She brought herself. She sat on the porch and drank sweet tea and watched Marcus work on the bungalow and didn't offer to call anyone or fund anything or solve a single problem. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Harder than medical school. Harder than her first solo surgery. Harder than the night Paul left. But she did it. And slowly, not all at once, not in a rush, something grew between them. Not a transaction, not a rescue, not a project. Just two people who had lost enough to know what mattered, sitting together in the slow Alabama twilight, learning to be present. The first time Marcus kissed her, really kissed her, not on the forehead, was on a Tuesday evening in June. Isaiah was inside watching a movie. They were on the porch, and the fireflies were out, thousands of them, blinking in the dark like tiny, patient hearts. He turned to her and said, I'm scared. Of what? Of wanting this. Of letting someone in and losing them again. She took his face in her hands, hands that had held human hearts, that had stitched arteries and closed chests and saved lives, and she kissed him. Gently, then not gently. He pulled her close, and she felt his arms around her, solid and warm, and she thought, this is what it means to be held, not admired, not needed. Held. When they pulled apart, Isaiah's face was pressed against the window, grinning. I knew it, he yelled through the glass. Thanksgiving came back around the way it always does. Elena drove down from New York, not running this time, not fleeing, driving toward something. The bungalow was finished. Red front door, just like Isaiah's drawing. Marcus had built it with his own hands, and it stood solid and warm on its quiet street. A house that meant something because someone had cared enough to make it right. She pulled into the driveway. Isaiah burst out the front door before she'd even cut the engine. Miss Elena! Dad made Mama's pancakes and the turkey. He's been cooking since 5 in the morning. He wouldn't let me help because he said I, quote, lack discipline in the kitchen. Rude. Marcus appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He looked at her, and the year between them, the mistakes, the silence, the slow work of two people learning to be honest, was there in his eyes, and so was something else. You made it, he said. I made it. The house filled up the way it had last year. June with pies, Loretta with her handshake and her opinions, Tanya and Derek and the kids, the noise, the warmth, the beautiful chaos of people who chose each other every day. On the mantel, beside a crayon dragon with purple wings, sat a framed photograph of Denise. Elena had asked Marcus about it once, whether he wanted to move it when she was there. She's part of this family, he'd said. She always will be. You're not replacing anyone. You're just adding to the story. Now, as the table was set and the food was laid out and Loretta demanded everyone hold hands for grace, Elena looked around the room and let herself feel it, all of it, the gratitude and the grief and the terrifying, luminous hope, without trying to manage it or fix it or earn it. Marcus squeezed her hand. Isaiah leaned into her side. Loretta said grace in a voice that shook with age and conviction. thanking God for food and family and the strangers who become both. And Dr. Elena Voss, who had spent her life believing that her worth lived in what she could do for others, closed her eyes and felt something she hadn't known she was missing. Not enough, exactly. Something quieter than that. Something like rest, like the moment after a long surgery when the monitor's steady and the heart beats on its own and you step back from the table and breathe and know, not hope, not pray, but know that it's going to be okay. She didn't know what next year would look like. She didn't know if she'd ever fully learn to stop fixing, or if Marcus would ever fully stop bracing for loss, or if the distance between New York and Alabama would eventually demand a choice she wasn't ready to make. But Isaiah was drawing a new picture under the table, sneaking crayons between bites of candied yams, and when Elena glanced down, she saw 5 figures this time. Marcus, Isaiah, Denise on her cloud, Elena with her dish towel, and a golden retriever with a big, goofy smile. "That's Rocket," Isaiah whispered. "He's next." And Elena laughed, and Marcus heard her laugh and smiled, and Loretta told everyone to eat before the food got cold. And outside, the Alabama sky stretched wide and endless and full of the kind of quiet that isn't empty at all. The kind that holds everything you've lost and everything you've found and lets them exist side by side without asking you to choose.